Kyle Frederick, the rock and roller Nashville extraordinaire. There you go. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's still rocking. You and I have both taken like a path similar as far as territory, because we both grew up in Kentucky, came to Nashville about the same time. I think you beat me to Nashville by just a few years, but I cannot remember a time that I've lived in Nashville, which I moved here in '85, that I didn't know who you were.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
So
thanks.
yeah, you've been the rocker in my head there for years, your music. So it's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Yeah, this is great.
For your people back home that know you in Kentucky, tell everybody a little bit about where you grew up.
Born in Louisville, but my parents moved to Bowling Green right away. So I grew up in Bowling Green. I grew up in a neighborhood called Briarwood.
I know where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, right off Cemetery Road.
Mm-hmm.
Just had some serious tornado damage in that neighborhood too.
They sure did. They sure did. You lived in an area where I know you worked with Foster and Lloyd for a while, but the first time I ever met Bill Lloyd was in that area, because he worked at a record shop right there.
Tapes and Tops.
Yeah, something like that, in the Grants parking lot, right?
Yes, and yes. Bill and I were in. I was really lucky, Shannon, because I was allowed into this group of really like high school seniors and college freshmen when I was still in junior high.
Wow.
And played in these bands. I mean, I was playing in a band with Bill called Hoodwink, and we would play in bars, and then they had to like get me out of there because I was 15 years old. But it was an incredible experience. I was really fortunate. And that neighborhood was full of amazing art. Bill Lloyd lived there. David Surface lived there. Of course, Sam Bush came from Bowling Green. Jonelle Mosser, Chris Carmichael, Randy Goodman, David Surface, just on and on. And it was really right there in that neighborhood.
That's awesome. See, I grew up in the county over from you.
What county?
Edmonson County.
No kidding.
Edmonson County Wildcats, 1976 basketball state champions. That was us.
Congratulations.
If you're from that area, you know exactly the excitement of that, you know. But I know that when you came to Nashville, I mean, I remember you playing a lot of clubs in the area in early days of Nashville, and you really made a name for yourself in this city. But you've gone on you've continued recording. You've done country stuff, and you've done rock stuff. And I know you mentioned right before we went on your days with Earl Thomas Conley.
Yes, I was again very lucky. Moved down here in 1980, and by 1981. I was on the road. I was working with Joe's son. He was on Elektra Records. Jimmy Bowen was producing, and that transitioned into Earl Thomas Conley, and worked with ETC for almost 4.5, 5 years, and just constantly touring in the '80s. Then Foster and Lloyd, worked at the Castle as a publishing artist, production artist. Started a band here called the Alaskans, which was a rock with Andy Brown, and
Andy Brown, who was at one time my brother-in-law. Sure. He's forever my brother-in-law. Yeah, incredible musician. Let me point this out for those who don't know. You mentioned the Castle.
Yes.
Your Castle recording studio.
Yes.
For those who don't know, it literally looks like a castle.
It is a castle.
It is a castle. Yes, it is a castle. You drive up to it. It's a beautiful place, but just unbelievable names that have recorded there. Some great music has come out of there.
The list is too long.
The
Noyens family, whom I love, Joseph Noyens and his family, bought that piece of property late 70s. And it's for a while, was one of the absolute state-of-the-art, most well-equipped studios in the area. Mm-hmm. And you're right, everybody in the world's recorded out there. I've stayed out there by myself a couple of nights back in those days.
They say it's haunted, you know.
It's a spooky place. I've done it.
I want to ask you about your new album because you'd sent this to me, and thank you for over the years keeping me up with your music and continuing to send it to me.
Thank you for listening.
I always enjoy it. And you'd sent it to me, and I just finished work. I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting here listening to it, just rocking out. And there's the title of the album. Explain this.
Mr.
Tell us
Mercurial.
about the album title.
I was going to call the album, the working title was, by the way, Byron House produced this. Byron's also from Bowling Green. Byron also worked at the Castle. Byron's worked with Robert Plant, Linda Ronstadt.
Incredible resume. Yeah.
And producer.
He's
And
a
so
music man. Let's say that. Music man. He is a music man.
He's my musical guru. We worked on this record. It took a year to write it, a year to record it. And the working title was not what the album I was going to call it, something like Tragic's Happy Cousin. That was, serious, like a
yeah.
And then the music is it's very there's a lot going on. It's
deep. Yeah.
It is, and a lot of personal stuff, and I borrow from everything, from rock and country and bluegrass and folk and electronic music, and I just thought, God, I'm all over the place. I'm like really mercurial, and I went, called my friend Kevin Lovelace in Bowling Green, another musical guru of mine, and I said, okay, choice A, choice B, and he said, definitely Mr. Mercurial. So shameless plug, Shannon. Sorry.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's a great record. It starts off, you set a mood with this album with the very first song. Can you talk about that? That
was a conversation I had with a friend of mine named David Whitaker, who was moved to New Zealand. He worked at Fruit of the Loom forever. And he was having a get together to say so long in Bowling Green. I knew I wasn't going to see him, it was going to be a long time, if ever. So we talked for 46 minutes.
So that's the title of the song.
That's the title of the song.
Wow.
And, yeah.
And it sounds to me like when I listen to it, it really sounds like that's the conversation you had.
It was, I drew very specifically from that conversation, yes.
Wow. And from there, the album moves on. Can you talk about that? I think there's you've got several cuts on the album. Can't remember the name of the number.
There are 13 songs. There's a couple of vignettes. There's a song about my infatuation with Tilda Swinton, and I kind of dedicated a make-believe dance to her, and it's only a minute something. But it goes from some very personal moments to some very fun moments, some moments growing up, living in Nashville. There's a song on there called Smilin'.
Yeah.
That is that song's about Antioch. That song's about South Nashville and driving through there and just seeing it every day on my way to work for a very long time and observing it.
Yeah. It's emotional to me. It's an emotional album.
I will take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I mean that as a compliment. And it's not just from knowing you and hearing your voice sing the lyrics, but it sounds personal. A lot of it sounds personal. And to me, that's emotional.
You're gonna get me going here.
No, seriously. I mean, you're talking about friends and you're talking about places, or singing about those. And that's how it comes across to me. So I'm not sure how it hits everybody else, but that's how it hits me.
Thanks. There was a very nice review in a local magazine in the Nashville scene. And it was much more in depth than I ever thought it was going to be. And it's funny because I'm reading it going, oh my God, this guy, this journalist is kind of, he understands me maybe better than he knows me maybe better than I know myself. It's really cathartic, and I'm not kidding. It's an amazing thing.
Well, that's the thing about, I'm not a songwriter, and I'm not a musician. I'm completely musically untalented as far as playing or writing or singing, but I love to listen to it. So I feel like, I listen pretty hard when it comes to how someone not only puts the words together, but the emphasis they put on the words as they sing.
Hmm.
I guess it's tone, and sometimes you hear people, and it's okay. It's whatever they present, but you hear some people just present the words, and some people you can feel what they're feeling when they sing. And I read the article you're talking about, and that's what it reminded me of. Is that guy was the person? I'm sorry, I didn't even catch the name of who wrote it, but they were into your music. It's as if they were listening with headphones on and caught every little thing you said.
Yeah, it was Ed Hurt.
Okay.
He writes a
Yeah.
lot for the scene and a lot of other
Yeah.
publications. Yeah, and that's the thing about Byron that I love, because we'll go in to do vocals, and Byron, he doesn't like to do a ton of takes. You know, sing it again, sing it again. Okay, let's listen very carefully to what we've got. And if you don't distill it down to this, it's easy to do that, to try to get it perfect. And for me, the older I get, the less perfect is a possibility.
Though you say that, but you think of it, some of my favorite records, when I go back, are the ones that you listen closely and you hear a little mess up.
Yes,
Aren't those your favorites,
yes. And guitar solos, speaking for me,
Okay.
going back and listening to recordings, and you're like, you hate it at first. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to go fix this. I'm gonna, and then you hear it years later, and that's what you love about it.
Isn't that something? And those are the things when you listen, you point out to your friends, hey, listen to this part right here.
You're a
I'm the,
great listener. And then, it takes that, right?
mm,
I mean, you obviously love music a lot, and you have been a conduit for a lot of people making a lot of music over the years. So thank you.
I am a musicaholic. I truly am. I live it and I breathe it. I'm the person that if I love a song, I literally put my face into the speaker so that I can hear every little sound. If I don't like it, I walk away from the speaker. It's just how it
Yeah.
is.
I saw the Warhol Diaries. Have you seen this?
No,
On
no,
Netflix? Oh,
no.
um, anyway, there was a thing. It was Jerry Hall was being interviewed. Jerry Hall hung out a lot at the factory during those days before she married Jagger. And she was interviewed throughout this series, like 6 episodes. And she said something, one of the nuances of Warhol and his portraits were, if he did the lips and he drew out of the outline of the lips,
Yeah.
he was not a real big fan of the person he was drawing. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's further to, listening to a point and going, oh, I've had enough. So.
Yeah, paying lots of attention. Hey, who were you influenced by? Who are your favorite music artists?
I got to tell you, starting at about 13, early Yes albums, The Who, Todd Rundgren, early Todd Rundgren, rock, the U.S. kind of. I love Billy Gibbons playing. I love Joe Walsh playing. Love that. Of course, the Rolling Stones, but the British music did something to me. And speaking of Bill Lloyd took me to see the Who at MTSU. It was by the Numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Toots and the Maytals opened. This was 1974. Keith Moon was still alive.
Wow.
So that British stuff, I just got it. It just killed me.
Bill Lloyd is a big Beatles fan too. I think of him as a Beatles fan. Yeah.
He might be the biggest Beatle.
Yeah. Him and Richard Courtney here in town.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The Beatle Fest
Yeah.
that Richard used to do. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting line because you mentioned all the artists that you mentioned were rock, and And you ended up playing some country, and you
I
had,
was not going to move to Nashville, Shannon. Out of high school, I knew I was out of Bowling Green. Love Bowling Green, but I knew I was out of there. And I was seriously thinking about moving to New York or London.
yeah,
And my friend Randy Goodman said, "Hey, you should come to Nashville and check it out." I stayed on his couch for a month or so. And, it's close to family. In retrospect, you know, living this close to Bowling Green, I see my family, my friends, whom I love, and I've always gotten to see them. And my life would be completely different. And so when I moved down here, I had to immerse myself. So, okay, now I'm here. I've got to learn this stuff. And I got a gig with Joe's son. Ray Flack was playing guitar with Joe, and Ricky Skaggs hired Ray Flack. So I'm learning these Ray Flack licks, and I developed a love for that and for honky tonk music and outlaw country, Merle Haggard to this day. For me, that's the standard. So a lot of it I love, not a fan of all of it, I'm not a fan of all, a lot of different genres. But I love it. I love it. The simplicity of it is much, much more difficult than people think.
I will say that, like, you moved here in 1980, right, in Nashville.
Yes.
That was during a time that there were rock people moving to Nashville, but nobody really knew it. And there weren't, a lot of people didn't get signed out of Nashville, and that's changed. It was a whole different scene. I think that was the beginning of the era when there were rock bands beginning to move here, but it was still thought of as a country town, and now it is more of a music town.
Now the secret's out.
Yeah, there's a lot of rockers here, and there's a lot of rock and roll bands that come here to record now. So
Your talent's been here forever,
Yeah. Yeah.
Springsteen used to sneak in and out of town. Bob Dylan, Neil Young,
Mhm.
Linda Ronstadt. I mean, James Taylor, all these people used to come in and out of here. In 1980, when I first got here, there were Frankenstein's on West End. Was a killer rock club. Exit In was constantly having national acts in and out of it. Cantrell's,
Yeah.
you had the Scorchers at the time who did get signed.
Jason and the Scorchers.
Gee whiz, man, the Satellites. And so it happened for some people, but it was much, much more narrow sky in the early 80s, that's for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. And you saw it before I did, but we kind of lived through it all.
I don't know how.
Hey, thanks for taking the time to talk. And best to you on this new album.
Thank you.
I will pass this along, that to find out more about you, the best place to go is to your website, I believe.
Yes.
Find
Kyle,
your, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's KyleFrederickMusic.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mr. Mercurial. I can't
That's
even
me.
pronounce.
Thank you, Shannon. What a great pleasure.
Thank you.